The story begins at a bar called Bandstand in a town that is not named. A fancy car pulls up, and a tall man gets out. He is allowed to go inside after showing his business card to the bouncer at the entrance. Upon entering, he sees that the bar is very vibrant. Many customers are drinking and dancing. A band is playing loud, bluesy rock music, and the bartenders are making a lot of money. Dalton, the main bouncer or cooler, is nearby, keeping a close eye on the crowd and other bouncers. When a small fight erupts involving 3 bouncers, he approaches the customer who started the altercation and asks him and his friend to leave. The customer apologizes, promising to behave. Dalton turns away, and the customer grabs a knife from nearby, cutting Dalton on his upper arm. Dalton appears unbothered, especially when the customer expresses a desire to fight him. Dalton calmly tells him to take the fight outside. Once they are outside, Dalton smiles and leaves them with 5 of the largest bouncers standing guard at the door. Once back in the bar, the tall businessman introduces himself to Dalton, who is tending to the wound he had just gotten. The man goes by the name Tillman and expresses his interest in hiring Dalton to help him improve a bar he recently acquired near Kansas City. After acquiring the establishment, it started attracting a rowdy crowd. Dalton proposes his terms: a payment of $5,000 upfront and $500 per night until the bar is cleaned up, at which point he can leave. Tillman is pleased with the arrangement and hands Dalton a plane ticket. However, Dalton declines, citing his aversion to flying due to safety concerns. Dalton heads to a nearby parking garage in his old, beat-up 1964 Buick Riviera and casually gives the keys to the attendant, offering him the car if he wants it. Underneath the cover in the garage is Dalton's real car, a 1986 Mercedes 560, which he drives out of town. Upon reaching Jasper, Missouri, Dalton heads straight to Tillman's club, the Double Deuce. Before entering the venue, a large and intimidating bouncer named Morgan forcefully removes a troublemaker from the premises. Inside, Dalton positions himself by the bar, anticipating Tillman's arrival. A waitress named Carrie approaches Dalton, inquiring about his identity and mentioning that she recognizes his name. Already a legend in the nightclub security business, Dalton's presence elicits excitement from the other bouncers. One of them spreads a rumor that Dalton once killed a man by tearing out his throat with bare hands. Dalton observes the club and notices that some staff members are unfit for the job, dealing drugs, or too preoccupied with flirting with female customers to intervene in fights. As the night progresses, a violent brawl erupts among customers and bouncers. Furniture is destroyed, and one bouncer, Steve, sports a noticeable black eye. Morgan, another bouncer, has beaten several patrons, seemingly relishing the violence. Dalton reconnects with Cody, the blind guitarist of the band, who performs behind a protective chicken wire cage to shield himself from thrown bottles. Dalton and Cody clearly share a long-standing acquaintance. Afterward, Dalton visits a used car lot and purchases a 1965 Buick Riviera, adding to his collection of old vehicles. He then stops by a junkyard to acquire several spare tires, loading them into the car's trunk. On a nearby farm belonging to an elderly man named Emmett, there's a loft apartment for rent. While discussing the rent with Emmett, a helicopter passes over the small lake beside Emmett's property and flies low over his horse corral, startling the horses. Emmett complains that the helicopter's owner, Brad Wesley, seems to deliberately fly low to bother him and agitate his horses. Later, Dalton and Tillman hold a staff meeting before the club opens that night. Tillman announces plans to renovate the bar and assigns Dalton to manage the floor. Dalton promptly dismisses Morgan, explaining that he's not suited for the job. Morgan storms out angrily after making threats. Dalton also lets go of the woman involved in drug dealings. He then outlines new rules. Everyone should remain vigilant and never underestimate a customer's potential to cause trouble. All fights should be taken outside to avoid damaging the club further. They should maintain a friendly demeanor until Dalton decides they need to be more assertive with unruly customers. He advises them not to take insults personally, reminding them that it's just a job. That night at the bar, several fights erupt, but Dalton and his team manage to handle them together. Dalton catches Steven in a storeroom engaging in sexual activity with a female customer and promptly fires him on the spot. He also observes one of the bartenders, Pat, skimming money from the register and helping himself to free beers. Initially hesitant, Tillman dismisses Pat, which carries more significance than just removing someone who was cheating. Tillman also notes that it was a good night because there were no serious injuries or fatalities. When Dalton leaves later, he discovers that his Riviera's windshield has been shattered, all 4 tires are flat and the antenna is broken. He reacts with a sense of familiarity, as though he's experienced similar situations before. The following morning, while driving to town, Dalton narrowly avoids a collision with Brad Wesley, who is recklessly swerving in his Mustang. At a local auto parts store, Dalton befriends the owner, Red, who sells him a new antenna and offers to order a replacement windshield. Right then, Wesley enters accompanied by a menacing-looking man named Jimmy, who gives Dalton a hostile glare as he leaves. After Dalton exits, Wesley appears to greet Red in a friendly manner, but Red understands that Wesley is there to demand money from him. Later that night at the Double Deuce, Dalton is summoned to Tillman's office. Pat, the bartender who was fired, is present along with a man named O'Connor. O'Connor informs Dalton that Tillman has reversed his decision to fire Pat. When Dalton seeks an explanation, O'Connor reveals that Tillman purchases his liquor and beer from Wesley, and Pat happens to be Wesley's nephew. Pat brandishes a large Bowie knife at Dalton, but Dalton easily evades it and disarms him. Another one of Wesley's henchmen, a stout man named Tinker, cuts Dalton under his arm. Despite this, Dalton displays exceptional martial arts skills and defeats all of them, crashing through the office window with O'Connor. He instructs his colleagues to throw them all out while he heads to the emergency room. At the hospital, Dalton encounters a lovely young doctor named Elizabeth Clay, who stitches up his wound without anesthesia at his request. He extends an invitation to her to visit the Double Deuce. The following day at Wesley's residence, Tinker and O'Connor express their regrets to their employer. While Wesley accepts Tinker's apology, he forces O'Connor to apologize repeatedly until he is severely beaten. O'Connor and Tinker track down Dalton at Emmett's farm on Wesley's orders, informing him of Wesley's desire to meet. They escort him to Wesley's house, where Wesley boasts about his influence in bringing major businesses to Jasper and offers Dalton a position at a new club he plans to open. Dalton declines the offer and departs. Later, he contacts his old pal Wade Garrett, another experienced bouncer, seeking information about Wesley. Garrett is unaware of Wesley, but advises Dalton to stay vigilant. In the following days, the Double Deuce undergoes the renovations outlined by Tillman, drawing larger crowds. However, the bar is quickly running low on alcohol, despite Tillman's efforts to secure more from various distributors. Upon realizing that Wesley has meddled, Dalton contacts a friend. A bouncer warns Dalton of a small group of thugs working for Wesley waiting at the entrance. Among them, Dalton notices one concealing a blade on his boot. Refusing them entry, the situation escalates into violence, but Dalton easily subdues them and ejects them from the premises. Doc Clay arrives, and Dalton takes her out after finishing his shift. She questions his satisfaction in his line of work, to which he reluctantly admits that it's just a job to him. Doc Clay points out the toll that his numerous injuries may have on his longevity, advising him to slow down. Dalton receives her advice with some level of interest. The following day at the Deuce, Dalton converses with Cody, who discloses that Elizabeth Clay is Red's daughter and a former romantic interest of Wesley. Cody warns Dalton to proceed cautiously due to Wesley's intense jealousy following her departure. Just then, a bouncer informs Dalton about a delivery that has arrived. Dalton oversees the inventory on the loading dock. Morgan, O'Connor, Tinker, and another one of Wesley's henchmen appear, commanding the delivery person to return the goods. They start smashing bottles and attempt to engage in a physical altercation with Dalton, who manages to take down several of them before being struck on the head with a bottle. Wade Garrett shows up and heads to the dock, where he discovers Dalton being held down while the henchmen shoot at him. Wade swiftly joins the skirmish, and together they successfully defeat Wesley's associates. That evening, Dalton brings Wesley to meet Elizabeth, and she and Wade quickly bond. Wade suggests that Dalton may have met the woman who could positively influence him. Dalton dismisses the idea, feeling that his violent lifestyle and past experiences with women have left him skeptical about settling down. Wade reassures him that the deadly encounter in which he was involved was not entirely his fault, as the woman he was with had not disclosed her marital status, leading her husband to threaten him with a gun, forcing Dalton to defend himself. The following night, Garrett keeps Dalton company at the bar. Suddenly, someone bursts in with the alarming news that Red's store is engulfed in flames. Dalton rushes outside just in time to witness the building explode, possibly due to a firebomb. Meanwhile, Wesley manages to sneak into the bar undetected. He expresses his regret over the fire at Red's establishment. In an attempt to provoke Dalton and his group, he instructs his attractive girlfriend, Denise, to perform a striptease. Despite the bouncer's attempts to intervene, Denise ignores them until Dalton intervenes and guides her back to Wesley. Subsequently, Wesley instigates a confrontation between Jimmy and the bouncers. Jimmy defeats them using a pool cue and his martial arts expertise. He then challenges Wade to a fight, leading to an intense battle that ends in a stalemate until Dalton steps in. A brief scuffle occurs between him and Dalton until Wesley fires a shot from a gun, signaling his departure due to the situation not going his way. A gathering of influential business figures, including Tillman and Red, convenes to address Wesley's escalating behavior. Red considers leaving town due to the increased volatility and aggression displayed by Wesley. Wesley somehow learns about the meeting and retaliates by sending one of his associates to ram a monster truck through the car dealership owned by Stroudenmeyer, a local businessman in Jasper. Wesley boldly proclaims his dominance over Jasper. When Elizabeth confronts him about his actions, Wesley reveals that his animosity stems from his rivalry with Dalton, warning that Dalton must either depart or face dire consequences. Elizabeth visits Dalton that evening and urges him to depart. Dalton declines, mentioning his past encounters with individuals like Wesley and his determination to confront them. Elizabeth suggests that the town is not solely his responsibility and voices concerns about his potentially excessive violence. Suddenly, Emmett's residence catches fire. Dalton swiftly enters the burning house and rescues an unharmed Emmett. As the house erupts in flames once more, Dalton hears Jimmy fleeing on a motorcycle. He pursues Jimmy and manages to dislodge him from the motorcycle. They engage in a physical altercation, exchanging martial arts strikes. Eventually, Dalton gains the upper hand, disarming Jimmy when he brandishes a gun. Dalton disarms Jimmy and delivers a fatal blow by seizing Jimmy's throat, resulting in his demise. Dalton transports Jimmy's body across the lake to Wesley's residence. The following day at the Deuce, Dalton receives a call from Wesley. Wesley informs him about a life-and-death decision he intends to make between Wade and Elizabeth, withholding the outcome from Dalton. Shortly thereafter, a severely injured Wade arrives at the Deuce. Concerned, Dalton rushes to the hospital to speak with Elizabeth, proposing that she accompany him as he leaves. Elizabeth declines adamantly, asserting her desire to be left alone. Upon returning to the Deuce, Dalton discovers Wade appearing to rest at the bar. Upon turning him over, Dalton observes that Wade has suffered a stab wound from a combat knife. Devastated by the sight, Dalton retrieves the knife and drives to Wesley's property. Wesley's henchmen wait outside his house, armed with shotguns. Upon spotting Dalton's Mercedes approaching quickly, they start shooting. The car doesn't slow down, crashing through a rock wall and flipping over. One of the men shoots the gas tank, causing the car to catch fire as it lands on its wheels and rolls a bit further. Upon inspecting the car, one of them discovers that the gas pedal has been rigged with a combat knife. Taking the knife, they order a search for Dalton, assuming he is inside the house. As one of them with the knife turns a corner, he finds Morgan dead on the ground. Meanwhile, inside the house, Dalton hunts down Wesley's men, taking them out one by one. He even topples a large stuffed polar bear onto Tinker. When Wesley enters and sees his men slain, he mocks Dalton, claiming Wade's death was a mercy killing. A physical fight ensues between Dalton and Wesley, with Wesley attempting to use hunting spears and a pistol against Dalton. Dalton manages to disarm Wesley and prepares to attack him, but Elizabeth intervenes just in time. Wesley tries to grab his pistol again, only to be struck by shotgun blasts from Red, Stroudenmeyer, and Tillman, who have arrived with their own weapons. Tillman informs Wesley that the town now belongs to them before delivering the final shot. Subsequently, when the police arrive, Red discreetly hides all the shotguns, and everyone pretends innocence. The tale concludes with Cody's band performing at the thriving Double Deuce while Dalton and Elizabeth enjoy a romantic swim together. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching and see you again soon. Take care.